Hello, welcome again to FairtaX Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
I'm Steve Hayes.
I'm Jade Walle.
And we are this week's edition of, oops, where's my cube? Here it is, the FairtaX Guys.
Yeah.
Scrolling.
There's you got your scrolling banner. All right.
That's
Well,
good.
Steve, Jade, it is always a pleasure to have you all on the podcast with us. And we're just going to dive right into our subject of the day. And this was when we were a couple of weeks ago when we were talking to Steve with his State of the Fair Tax address, which actually was pretty encouraging for this year. There were some rather significant changes to the governing structure of the Americans for Fair Taxation organization, and Jade was intimately involved in that. But on our last recording session, he had a conflict and wasn't able to join us. So I've got you both back. So Steve, Jade, either of you just kind of jump into what the old structure looks like, what the new structure looks like, and kind of what the difference you think that's going to make for the organization going forward.
Well, I'll do it very quickly. What we have is a very, I think, actually incredibly effective group of people who have been loyal for many, many years, who are on the board, and who are others who are leaders of the movement in various states. But one of the issues that we're facing is that a lot of us have, let's just say, matured to a point where we are not as easily in touch with the demographics that we really need. I mean, the polling shows that the demographic that is most excited about the fair tax, and both polls, national polls we've done, is the demographic like 25 to 40.
Jade's
And
group.
those people, as much as 70% of them would favor dumping the income tax for a consumption tax, like the fair tax. So we're talking about a group that really needs to be mobilized. And I think the way to do it is to look at combining, let's just say, the gravitas of the old board, the knowledge, with the enthusiasm of younger people. And let the younger group start to take over, and they actually understand more how to communicate. All of us that have grandchildren realize there's a problem in communicating to younger people sometimes, whereas people like Jade and the board he's put together, it's much easier because they really understand it more. And so Jade and John Grafer and I had a lot of discussions about this. And between them, they put together a really incredible group of people. Forget the age, just people themselves. They're talented, they've got abilities, and they are very, very interested, it's reflective of that 70% again, in getting the fair tax done. So Jade and John volunteered to do it. And at this point in time, the executive board, which is the, let's just say, more mature board at this point in terms of age, is taking still the leading hand in a lot of the decisions, but with the intention of the new group coming on and taking over more and more of that. So that's the plan. It's in effect right now. And I think I should let Jay take over and explain what he's done and how it's working.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. That's a great summary. I think the key, it's always good to start with the legacy and foundation that the legacy board is created and the network. I'm perpetually amazed at how connected Steve is and some of the board members with players, and whether at the state level or at the federal level, their relationships and networks are invaluable. And so I think building on that, standing on the shoulders of those giants, if you will, trying to get a younger board in the demographic of 25 to 40, like Steve was talking about, we wanted to be careful about it, Bob, because you don't want to just throw the baby out with the bathwater and with this incredible legacy. And so the way we've structured things is that the legacy board, we'll call it the executive board, is still the board. Now we have what we'll just call the board of directors, which is this younger group. And you can see their names and happy, shining, young, youthful faces on the website at fairtax.org. So I encourage the listeners to go check them out and see what they look like. But you'll see what John Grafer and I have done is pulled a group together that includes CPAs, several different engineers, IT professionals, folks involved in politics at the state level in a couple places, and some investment banking professionals that John has worked with. Like, you've got a really good diverse group, but they're in a different demographic. And I'm really excited about that, as well as, some of the purpose and impetus behind it is what doors that can maybe open up with some of the organizations that are around. Say, for example, Turning Point USA, that's a youthful kind of a group. In other folks as well, we believe this portraying this board with this younger demographic will, to Steve's point, maybe stir up some of these folks that are actually pretty keen to get rid of the IRS. When you look at our survey polling we did with Qantas Insights last year, so I'm super excited about it. Bob, the way we'd run it is we'd kind of run that board separately, and John Grafer and I, who are on the executive board, would kind of be the conduit, the liaison, if you will. But these younger folks, they're welcome to come to the executive board meetings anytime they want. And actually, I think Steve really prefers that because he wants the new ideas and the youthful exuberance inserted into the executive board. So, and Steve was eloquent in how he kind of prepped the executive board, because you've got some folks that are maybe super experienced and many years under their belt, and you can't just say, hey, we're just going to replace the board with a young board. That might not go over so well. So Steve was great. He took his time and really explained the strategy behind it and why we're doing it, and hey, don't worry, you're not losing your place here. Maybe you just lose your picture on the website. And so I think everyone's really on board. It was pretty much unanimous decision to go forward with it.
Right.
And we're excited to see where it can go. So John and I will lead kind of separate, we think at least quarterly board meetings with this new board of directors, and bring any, ideas, et cetera. Now, one of the things we're super excited about, Bob, is, when you have folks that are in their 60s or 70s, maybe sometimes 80s, what is your take on how adept that group, in general, broad brushstroke, might be at creating a TikTok about the fair tax? Yeah, I'm fit. A TikTok. Yeah, exactly. What? I'm 52, yeah. So I'm kind of in the middle here. I'll consider myself young here, self-appointed, and I don't know how to do a TikTok, and I don't really want to. But this group, a lot of them are like, oh yes, I know how to do that. I've done this, and they're starting to collaborate, and we're going to bring it up more to start to even reach out further with different demographics, with different tools. Some of our executive board, I will say, like Randy, like some of these guys are great at social media and some of the legacy tools that have kind of came about the last 15, 20 years. But there's this pace of change is so dramatic. You kind of need this youthful group. And that's one of the ways they'll really contribute in getting the word out about the fair tax.
Okay. One thing you need to do, if you can, is to reach out to Paul Wizakowski, who is now working for NASA, the guy that created those little luncheon taxes videos, and see if we can't get him to come up with some new stuff.
Yeah. I loved those videos. Those were great.
Yeah, I put one at the end of every one of these programs. They've been run over and over again. People probably recognize them by it, but he is just a creative genius. And I know he's really busy with this Artemis program that NASA's going back to the moon now. But if we could, if you could somehow approach him and at least plant the idea in his head that maybe he could do a little updated series of those things, because they were just so good.
But Bob, did you have you and Ron, I want to say, back in the day on as a guest?
Yeah, we interviewed him here one time. It was quite a while ago. And he kind of gave us the backstory behind some of the videos that you see at the end of the program here every week. But that would be somebody that if I were in your shoes, I would want to see if I could, at least borrow some more of his creative genius and update the incredibly, I mean, those things are now 15 years old, those
Yeah.
videos now. They are still incredibly effective, a
Right.
way of comparing the income tax with the fair tax. And I'm sure Paul has, honed his craft even more so than he was back then. So that's my suggestion to you. See if you can't get him to come up with some more new videos for us.
I would love that. And just for the audience, these little, and what were they, little 2-minute vignettes, maybe
They're
90 seconds?
not a minute to a minute and a half. It's
Yeah.
I don't think any of them are 2 minutes long. There's five of them.
Yeah, and so for the audience's sake, I know you guys know what they were doing. You'd have a gentleman from the IRS explaining this tax system, a gentleman of the fair tax explaining that tax system, and a young professional woman kind of asking about the systems and, hey, what's best for me? How do I get ahead? And you'd hear the IRS person saying, well, here's this stack of paper. Now you have to go through this. Watch out for this because you could go to jail. And you really hear the absurdity of the IRS. And the fair tax is like, you just pay as you go, and you get a prebate, and so you're not taxed, with your basic necessities of life. And then the lady's like, it makes it so clear and obvious. It was a
Right.
very smart way to go about it.
And if you change those two guys from the IRS guy and the fair tax guy to two candidates competing for the young lady's vote, and see how that would work, maybe that would be something we could get Paul to do for us.
Hmm.
Bob, how is it there in Winston-Salem?
We're under a sheet of ice from this past weekend when we're recording this on the 29th of January, the weekend before. We had a significant weather event, more ice than snow, and sleet and freezing rain that has since melted for the whole week and refroze every night up until today. And as far as the weather is concerned, it's put a little bit of a braking effect on things to do other than get out and enjoy the beautiful winter wonderland here. I have a question. I have a question about encouraging young people to get involved. Will the board, the newly formed board, be active in either volunteer or state level recruitment in encouraging younger people to be involved in the fair tax movement?
I think so. And I'll let Steve answer as well, but absolutely a lot of the folks that I recruited on the board, they want to. And they want to be more than just a pretty face, so to speak. And so I've got one engineer in Wisconsin. I'm asking him to accompany me. Well, he's going to try to get off work. We'll see if it works out to present at Ole Miss on April 2nd. I'm going to present to the Freedom Studies Scholars Group. This is the group that hosted Turning Point USA with Vice President Vance and Erica Kirk a couple months ago. And so, my daughter's involved in that group, and so I'm gonna present on the fair tax. I'm not sure yet if I get an hour and a half or 45 minutes or what, but so that's one example. Yeah, let's get you involved, let's get your face out there, and that'll spur even greater volunteer involvement and in recruiting.
Absolutely. I think it's important, and you said it a minute ago, the technologically connected in terms of communication. Our generation has basically adapted to some of the technology that's there and understand it a particular way. And then younger people's, even in the 30s and 40s, I'm speaking primarily about, my son's understanding of technology and uses from a marketing standpoint to accelerate more engagement than even we could have thought possible.
Right.
And that's why I asked the question: is there within the board? Is there a discussion of building a framework to reach laterally across the already established state leaders that are in place across the country for the fair tax?
Well, I know that's Jade and intent, Bob. And I can tell you, based on the little bit of interaction I've had, because it's just really starting up with some of the new members, there's, as Jade said, a lot of enthusiasm for it because these people themselves are enthusiastic, but their friends are also enthusiastic about the idea. It's not quite the same as people like the two Bobs and Steve. A lot of our friends, well, look, it would be maybe better, but we're making it okay, blah, blah, whatever. That's somebody else's problem. Well, these are people that is their problem. They're the ones who are going to have to live with what is being created here. And so I think, to your point, Bob, it's really A, important, but B, practical for them to do it because they live in that environment. They see the impact of the present system on them. They likely, like when my daughter was younger, she would say her group, they have as much chance of collecting Social Security as riding in an alien spacecraft. Okay. That's the reality they see. They need a solution if they're going to do it. I mean, right now they're just contributing to old people from their point of view. Right. And in fact, that is what's happening.
Yeah. How do we translate this enthusiasm into motion forward on the political front? I mean, there is a lot of people making a lot of money off the income tax, and unfortunately, those are the same folks that are writing the tax laws. How do we move those folks to act in the interest of the people instead of themselves? I know you've been working on that for decades, Steve.
Well, the way to do it, and I think we have a real opportunity, assuming that the elections in November or continued the Republican majority, we have a real likelihood that Trump is going to move toward an alternative to the income tax and getting rid of the IRS in the last 2 years of his term. I mean, that's probably, I'm not saying probably, that is on his agenda from what I've been told. And he said it. He's made lots of public pronouncements. You have to qualify that a little bit by saying, what if we go to war with Iran or Russia or whatever? A lot of stuff changes. However, that is something that's out there. And so I believe the fact that you have more and more people, and we're going to make sure that at the appropriate time Trump sees the polling, because that demographic is very important to him as well, that they really support the fair tax. And we're going to get it in front of Congress, that the younger demographic really supports this. But I think that's what moves the needle, Bob. It's not likely that we're going to take a member of Congress who's been getting the third or so of his political contributions because of the income tax, his support or opposition to different tax issues. It's not likely that that person's going to quickly give up that revenue. But if you have a president that's pushing it and who's willing to go into their district and explain it to wild ovations, and then say, call Congressperson Y and let them know how you feel, none of these people really want that. He's got an incredibly big stick that he can use because Trump will fill the room. He's proven that. And when he fills the room, they don't want that because that doesn't look good for re-election at all. So I think that your answer to your question is that we need a president that's going to push through it. And we have one now that would like to, if he is able to have enough votes in the House and Senate to do it.
And Bob, I'll add on to what Steve's saying. Steve is absolutely right. And I learned this in my first 6 months of getting involved with you guys with the fair tax is intellectual argument, an understanding of something that's common sense and makes sense. We think idealistically going in that that'll move the needle. Look, it makes sense. Everyone agrees with me. It doesn't move the needle. Fire holding on to your power. These base human instincts are really what drive Congress, is what Steve's kind of alluding to here. But a bulldog who can push things through and get his agenda across and fill the room, like Steve's saying, all of a sudden people are looking around and they're like, yeah, I support the fair tax, if that were the flavor of the day. And that's how it gets done. Unfortunately, an intellectual argument that this is the best idea, you'll get 30, 40 co-sponsors like we have now, but you're not going to get a nationwide movement unless there's an impetus, a bull in a china shop, or some event that necessitates a drastic change as a matter of survival. But this is a rare opportunity that Steve's referring to maybe get it done. And yes, the intellectual argument still holds up, check mark, and so that's foundational. But this new impetus, a way to think of the legacy of President Trump could leave if he got rid of the infernal revenue service. That would be incredible. So I'm excited about it, but it's unique. It's a study in human psychology. You're not going to win them over with an intellectual argument, unfortunately.
Let me ask you one more thing. Generally, we're talking about appealing to a younger demographic. And generally, of course, there are a lot of young folks that are on the political right side, right as in being conservative, not right and wrong. But generally, you would think that the younger demographic tends to be more liberal. And is this movement with the the younger board coming here, possibly going to be a way that we can start convincing some of the people who have historically opposed the fair tax from the other side of the political aisle? Is this a way to reach out to them and win them over?
Go ahead, Jade.
I think so. We've had a Democrat co-sponsor years ago for the fair tax in the House. But wouldn't that be great? I think it is a unique opportunity. Steve, I welcome your input, but
I think so too. And I think what we're seeing is that the high percentage of support among the younger demographic was all three: Republican, Democrat, and Independent. And I think that's an issue that they all can agree on. Now, how the money is spent that's raised, you're going to have massive disagreements, perhaps. But how the money is actually earned into the Treasury, provided that you handle that threshold idea of, unfair to lower income, which we do with the prebate, I think you're going to see a lot of those younger people that are much more practical in terms of, let's get something that works right, that doesn't create a huge problem for us. The Uber driver who said, yes, I support it, he doesn't want to keep all these records and then be chased by the IRS anyway. Basically, he wants it simple. He wants to be able to keep what he makes and determine what he wants to spend. The same things that all of us on this call want. But this is a group that is growing in power, and they really are the swing vote. And they're going to become more and more, if you look at the demographics, more and more of the swing vote that's going to determine who gets elected. So I think the movement that Jade and John are leading to get more people involved is going to result in higher visibility of the issue in congressional races, which is going to be nothing but positive.
Absolutely. And what Steve was referring to in our Qantas Insights poll we did nationally in June of 2025, question 4, do you favor or oppose replacing the income tax with a national sales tax? Now, overwhelmingly 58% of respondents, over 1,000 respondents, favor getting rid of the IRS for a national sales tax. Incredible. What's that breakdown? 69% of Republicans favor that. 52% of Democrats favored getting rid of the income tax and replacing it with a national sales tax. 52% of Democrats responded with that. That's pretty encouraging.
I would think more money in your pocket is something that would appeal across the entire political spectrum. No more withholding, no more payroll taxes, no more tax returns. That has to appeal to everybody.
Well, it does, but you've got to overcome that knee-jerk reaction of, oh my gosh, my prices are going to go up 30%.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can do that, obviously.
We will address that next week.
All right, good. But that is the key thing here is we've got to get our message honed enough. And frankly, the younger people, no offense to the three seniors on the call, but the younger people duplicate that logic much faster. That's what I found.
Mm-hmm.
With regard to the aging out of representatives in the Congress,
right?
You alluded to this just a minute ago. My question relates to a focus on recruitment for running for office. Do some of the young people that we talk to, are they, because of their desire to get rid of the Internal Revenue Service and create something that's more fair and very simple, do you think that there's a better chance of finding people to run for political office in the young, in the, let's say, 40 to 60-year-old range, under this rejuvenated and tightly focused on young, energetic people's board of directors? Do you think that we have a chance to encourage people to run for public office and be and focus on the fair tax in that regard?
Well, I think several of the ones on the board strike me as people who'd be interested in running on the new board. But no, I think it's a good question, Bob. The main issues for most people is how do you raise the money to compete? Because the incumbent, like there's a fair tax supporter who's a very popular state representative in Texas running against Congressman Crenshaw. And the problem is that Crenshaw is an incumbent and he's got about $1,200,000 of money in his war chest. This fellow has $300,000. Now, he's not a quote, younger. I mean, I think Steve Toth is in his 50s, probably, maybe 60s. But he's someone who very conservative and supports the fair tax. But he's going to have a big uphill fight, even though Crenshaw isn't very popular there, because of the funding difference. And that's the real issue, I think, because I've had conversations with a number of people that were contemplating running. And that was always the issue. How do I get the amount of funding that I need to overcome the name recognition and the power of the incumbent?
Steve, how much do you need? Bob will just write a check.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's true.
Which Bob?
I left that ambiguous on purpose.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Our time has gotten away from us. We're going to pretty well have to leave it right here and right there. As things develop with this new board, I'd like to get both of you back at a future date, and you can kind of give us a progress report, let us know how things are going, what progress has been made. And of course, I always want to thank both of you guys for your efforts on behalf of the fair tax. And I say we'll have you back here shortly.
We thank the both of you very much.
Yep. It's amazing the run you guys have had with FairTax Power Radio. It's really awesome. Thank you for that.
All righty. Well,
together, Bob. I don't know which way to look to point at him there. I guess we're going to get 4 boxes for the whole program. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, if you point towards your microphone, you're pointing towards me. But that's there we go. Okay, well, that is going to have to wrap up this edition of FairTax Power Radio. Steve, Jade, thank you again so much for joining us. And it's always enlightening and entertaining to talk to the both of you. And I say we will indeed have you back. But until we meet again, same time, same channel next week here on FairTax Power Radio, I'm Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough.
Steve Hayes.
Jade, Walle.
We are the FairTax Guys, providing you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it, all together, guys.
You'll demand it.
So what do you need from me to get these taxes collected?
Glad you asked, because there is a fair amount of information you need to be aware of.
That's your tax plan?
Oh, no, this is just the revisions for this year's tax plan. What I need from you is you need to keep track of all of your income as well as any taxes that you've already paid. Also, any gifts that you received or gifts you've given to churches or charities or individuals throughout the entire year. Do you do any side jobs?
Every now and again.
Great, because there's some more information about that right here. Everything you need to know right here. So just simply compile that, send it in to us. Be careful, make sure there's no mistakes. If we do find mistakes were made, we can fine you or, you know, throw you in jail. So you might want to be aware of that.
And what do you need from me?
As an individual, nothing. As a business owner, or if you're doing side jobs, I mean, yes, you would have to collect taxes on that, but, well, it's all right here.
Can I get a copy of that?